Good morning. Glad to see everybody made it back safely from Westworld last night. It was pretty chilly. About a month ago, I was at CES and I was talking with some of my industry colleagues. We like to get together at that point and talk about the top trends from 2017. And what was interesting about last year is there were so many trends from the year that it was hard to get consensus on what the top trend was. But we did have some consensus on what the number one most used word was in business and marketing, and that was disruption. That shouldn't be a surprise. We heard it everywhere, right? Around business and marketing, and for good reason. We're in this time of unprecedented change. If we look at the Fortune 500 list, 50 years ago, the average stint for a company on that list was 75 years. And today it's just 15 years. And for marketing, there's never been a time of more change and some turbulence, and sometimes it can bring these feelings in the pit of our stomach when we think about disruption, the feeling that things are moving really, really fast and that you're not able to keep up and that you're falling behind. And when you're in those weak moments and you have those feelings, that word disruption can start to feel like another D word, destruction. But if we unpack it a little bit, it's far from it. Because disruption is truly about an evolution. It's about an evolution of something that we all crave. And that thing that we crave is innovation. And if you weren't interested in innovation, you wouldn't have flown here on a holiday to come to this conference, although it is in Scottsdale in the middle of the winter. But I think innovation is really the key driver. And if innovation is about iterating and making things better, disruption is about doing new things, as Brian talked about, that make the old things obsolete. We're going to park that for a minute and come back to it. But what I want to start with is the number one disruptor in B2B marketing today. And this shouldn't be a surprise, and Andrew talked about it. It's the thing that connects you to people. It's the mobile device. This device is with us 24/7 that delivers personally relevant content in the palm of our hands. It's changed the way we consume content forever, changed the way that we're influenced, and also changes the purchase path, not just for consumers, but for business decision makers too. So let's unpack that and talk about what it means for your business through the lens of your customers. People check their mobile devices 150 times a day. It seems like a lot, but some of you may check it 150 times just while I'm on stage this morning. Mobile is with us everywhere we go, both at work and at home, and it's really powering this era of the self-educated buyer. And that's true of consumers, and it's also true of business decision makers. And multiple studies show that 2/3, 66% of business decision making happens before anyone's actually open to having a conversation with your company. That puts the onus on us as marketers to really deliver our messages in the most relevant form possible. Now we know that mobile already accounts for more than half of all business purchases. It plays a role in that purchase cycle. But we also know something. We know that people will abandon a product and service if it has a lousy mobile experience. Yet only 31% of B2B professionals agree that their customer experience strategy is mobile first. So that creates a really tremendous opportunity, not just for those 3 in 10 who are there today, but for any company who's planning on joining them this year. Another big part of this is the fact that work and personal time is no longer neatly compartmentalized. If you're like me, you've given up on this concept of work-life balance, and I think the best we can do is the new phrase, which is work-life integration, figuring out ways to make your personal life and work life seamlessly work together. And it can be challenging because you can create documents and research products or create solutions for your clients just as soon as you can at 8 a.m. in the office and 8 o'clock at night at your kitchen table. And people are comfortable using the same platforms and the same technologies for their personal life and for business. You can research a server and then 3 minutes later with a couple clicks buy a pair of shoes. And what that's done is it challenges the notions of what a contextual business marketing channel is, and it changes a lot of things for us when we think about it through that lens. And of course, this is heightened with millennials. And we hear from you And our data suggests as well that millennials are just not an important target, they're the important target today for B2B marketing. And of course, we know that they're really active on mobile devices, and millennials are really familiar with technology and understand data exchange and all of that. But there are two trends to think about there. Number one, this access to data and information about your products and services everywhere has leveled the playing field in terms of who within an organization can be intelligent and make a decision. It's created this buying by committee. Not of every single purchase decision, but there are more people influencing more purchases across every organization, and millennials are at the core of that. And the second thing, and this can't be overstated, personal values have the greatest influence on the decisions that this segment makes at work. That's your most important segment, and personal values are front and center. So as a marketer, you need to think about being relevant, being credible. You need to think about relating at a personal level. All of those things in addition to selling through the value of your product and service. All of these factors have changed the game. It's changed the way that content's consumed, and it's never going back. It's raised the bar for marketers. So when we think about the mobile experience and how fleeting attention is on mobile, if something doesn't really speak to you, your thumb can fly right on by. Consider, what was the mobile experience for your last white paper, or your last ebook, or your last content marketing strategy? Now, think of something more dynamic. Think of something faster. Think of something that was built mobile first. It's time to disrupt the way you go to market. It doesn't mean that your goals are going to change. In fact, they're probably not. It just means that the bar is raised to the point where, as B2B marketers, you are just held to the same standards as consumer brands in being relevant and being human and being entertaining in the information that you deliver, because people are consuming this content on the same platforms. So you may be thinking at this point, what does this have to do with Facebook? Why is Paul here? And if you weren't at the party last night, is there truly a fully functional Western town on property here at the Fairmont? Well, I started my career with a decade in B2B marketing. So I spent about 10 years in B2B specifically. Then went and did some other things, and a little over 7 years ago joined Facebook. And I can honestly tell you that even 5 years ago, we weren't spending a lot of time building for B2B marketers. We weren't spending a lot of time thinking about that. We had other priorities that we were focused on. And something started to happen. We started hearing from you. We started hearing from companies about the success that they were having on our platforms. That they were using Facebook to find people that they used to be able to reach elsewhere, and now they couldn't find them there anymore. And they were using Facebook to reach new audiences. They were doing it to drive consideration and leads and sales for their business. And that drum started beating louder and louder and louder, to the point where we couldn't ignore that anymore. And we needed to dive in. And when we do that, we always start with people and what we can learn from people. What we found was actually surprising to us. We found that business decision makers spend 75% more time per day on Facebook than the average person. And they're 2 times more likely to be a daily active user. And those daily active users in general spend 1 in every 5 minutes that they spend overall on their mobile device on Facebook and Instagram. So this is a pretty significant finding. We also really dove into what people were doing. Why are they there? And there's a lot of findings that we have, and these are just 2 of them. Number 1, they're much more likely, these business decision makers, to be consuming product demos and product-related information on Facebook than other platforms. And then the last one didn't surprise me at all, because of the way that sharing is built into our platform, that Facebook is the #1 place that they're actually sharing information with their colleagues as they go through this self-educated buying cycle that happens every single time someone buys a product and service. So that then created a challenge for us. How do we help you reinvent your marketing to be relevant in the mobile era? And remember, when we talk about this, we talk about putting your messages in a newsfeed environment that is personally curated and relevant for each individual person. So I'm going to show you a few examples of some of the formats that companies are using and the success that they're having. But first, I want to start with mobile. Because mobile is the best place to start for discovery video. I want to start with video on mobile because video is the best place to start with for discovery all the way through the final purchase. Video is very, very powerful, and researchers say that 75% of all mobile traffic in 2020 will be video. Anybody else freaked out that 2020 is less than 2 years away? Keep seeing these stats and realize, like, that's here. That's now. And we know that these business decision makers are more likely to consume both short and long-form video content on Facebook than other platforms. So in a emotion-filled world, don't be caught standing still. Make sure the video is integrated through everything you do. We know that thought leadership is really critical for you, and it's actually a great way to bring people along that purchase decision making and to generate sales. But the average white paper ebook is not really built for mobile devices. And we know that people will abandon experiences that take more than 3 or 4 seconds to load. But we've seen companies leverage something called Facebook Canvas, which you see on the left-hand side there, to bring their white paper content to life in a totally different way, reimagined in mobile. Canvas, if you're not familiar with it, is a full-screen, expandable experience that takes over somebody's phone. You can use 360 in there. You can have product demos, infographics. You can even collect leads right out of Canvas. And it's actually built as a destination, meaning you can actually link to that experience from other places, from other advertising that you run. Now, part of the reason it's been so effective is it loads almost instantaneously in someone's newsfeed. So it gets over that huge hurdle of how do you create something interactive and actually make sure people can use it, because if they're going to abandon it because it doesn't load, then you might as well not build it. We also see companies using Facebook Carousel to break up their content into digestible pieces and serve it up in that way. And then playing with video is a great way to win on every single platform, and especially on mobile devices. Mobile is really made for events. With the mobile device, you can learn about an event, you can sign up for it, you can share it with a friend. If you're not able to attend, you can live stream that event, and as a marketer, you can distribute that content later right into somebody's mobile device. We see companies like Salesforce and Microsoft and many, many others having tremendous success across not just Facebook, but also Instagram in getting people to their events and building community around events. So that's another place that we're building and that we're seeing success. And I know that it's tough to take your product demos for complex solutions and build them for a mobile environment. But we also know that it's really critical, because if people are going to spend 2/3 of the purchase decision-making cycle researching on their own, you have to be there and you have to be relevant. And to be able to do this well, you actually have to have a cultural shift. Most companies start by taking their existing assets that they built for TV or for other channels and cutting them up and changing them for mobile. And they see some good success with that. But then quickly they learn about the promise of what they could do, what they could have if they do it differently, and actually build for mobile first. And some of the best marketers that I've seen have actually changed the culture of their marketing organization to say to their teams, if you're going to bring me ideas, you have to bring the ideas to mobile first. No mobile, no meeting. And I think that's how you're going to win. And it helps you reinvent and rethink things, like a webinar. You might have a fantastic 20-minute webinar, but are you spending enough time and focus on the 10 to 15-second trailer or teaser in a vertical or square format that's going to show up on someone's phone that's going to make them to actually want to go and spend that 20 minutes with you? Now, that's how we need to be rethinking things as we move forward. So eventually, someone's going to get through this self-education, and they're going to be ready to have a conversation with you. Thank God. You guys have done your job at that point. Your sales teams are ready. But we have to be able to collect these leads, and we have to be able to connect people with businesses. And this was actually a challenge on mobile, because our data shows that it takes people 39% longer to complete a form on mobile versus desktop. We've been hard at work in creating a really delightful experience that makes it easy to collect leads across devices, acquire the right leads, improve the quality of the contact info. People can actually change what pre-populates in there, and then plug this into your CRM system so you can access these leads in real time. And the secret that we've found from our product team is friction. You want it to be a frictionless experience, but then if there's no friction at all, you'll get a high volume of leads, but you're going to hear back from your sales team that those leads aren't quite the quality of what they need. Anyone ever heard that? Never, right? So having the right amount of friction into the process is actually important, and that's what we're building when we build for leads and collection like this. And if you're wondering what's next, I think all you have to do is think about your inbox. If you're like me and you're at a conference for a couple of days, you start to get sweaty palms when you think about what's in that inbox. You haven't really been able to look at it, and you know how much time it's going to take you on the flight home or that next day to dig out from under that. So it's no wonder that 2/3 of people across all generations, this isn't just millennials, this is boomers to everyone, say that they prefer messaging to phone calls or to email. And today, 20 million businesses exchange messages with people through Messenger every single month. So as call center volumes decline, we expect that platforms like Facebook Messenger, with 1 billion people using it, will become increasingly important for lead nurturing and for customer solutions and service. So finally, I want to leave you with 3 takeaways and a challenge. Number 1, mobile is fueling the shift in the B2B landscape, and now more than ever, you heard it from Brian this morning, you have to put people first. You have to think about what people are doing. And on that note, you have to reach these people where they're spending their time today. Not where they were 2 years ago, not where they were 5 years ago or 10 years ago, where they are today, and keep in mind that self-educated buying process that they're working their way through. And finally, reinventing marketing for the mobile age means thinking about that entire path to purchase, every piece of content that you put out, and changing your culture to make sure that you're building for mobile first. So you have a choice when you leave here today. You can go back and you can iterate and even innovate on your existing strategy and the same strategy that you had last year and the year before that and the year before that. Or you can disrupt your strategy and you can build for people and you can build mobile first. And I think that's where the opportunity lies. Thank you. And now help me welcome to the stage Ada Agrate from Microsoft, the General Manager of Marketing. Ada, welcome.
Thank you.
So I'm going to give a quick intro for you, a quick bio, and then jump right into some questions if you don't mind.
Great, yeah, absolutely.
So Ada has 2 decades of marketing experience and joined Microsoft in 2005 in a role as General Manager of the Global Demand Center and Cloud and Enterprise at Microsoft. Just a couple small things like that. She leads commercial acquisition strategy, brand, digital marketing, media, events, and creative strategy, as well as experiential marketing across the portfolio of cloud and enterprise offerings. Ada is a member of the Association of National Advertisers Integrated and Digital Marketing Committee and a member of the Corporate Board's Marketing Executive Council. On the personal side, she holds degrees from Syracuse and Fordham, lives in Kirkland with her husband and young daughter.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So I want to start with a question that's really to the core of what's going on at Microsoft today. At Facebook 5 years ago, we undertook a really massive transformation, and it was critical to the success of our business today, and that was a transformation to mobile. I talked about the no mobile, no meeting. We lived that in our company. It changed our culture and the way we communicate, and eventually the solutions that we built for people and for marketers. And I think that Satya has championed a similar transformation with Microsoft and his focus on the cloud. And we see in your earnings report, like, things seem to be going pretty well. As a Microsoft veteran, how has that changed the company and what impact has that had across the organization?
Great. I don't like the word veteran per se because I feel it dates you, you know, when it's like, oh, how long have you been at Microsoft? I usually like to say,
Expert.
well, a couple of years. So I think for Microsoft and the transformation, it's really happened, you know, across every line of business. It was more around, we lived in a world where we hung into the past and thought that the past would actually take us to the future. And when on-premises, and I'll speak on the commercial side, when the on-premises businesses, which was basically you sell a big contract, you say goodbye, and then a couple of years later you come back and you're like, hey, you have to renew your license. The way that we operated, the way that we built products was not aligned to where the future was going. So Satya did a lot to figure out how do we restructure teams so that we used to have these divisions that actually worked against each other versus with each other, and ultimately it's one Microsoft, one customer. So how we build the products, how the engineering teams were set up to actually build their products, how we actually go to market, and really thinking of marketing across the life cycle, not just marketing to drive demand in the earlier part of the funnel. And I think that you see it where we have a lot, I make fun because it's a one Microsoft mentality where everybody gets a voice and a vote, which is lovely. And at the same time, it creates some challenges, but it really encourages people to bring their thought leadership and point of view to the table without sort of seams or bureaucracy or whether you have a bigger title than somebody else. So I think that that's really encouraged people to just think outside of the box and really think of the customer first, and really thinking of putting ourselves in the customer's shoes, and then thinking from there, as opposed to just creating products that we think are marketable and then pushing forward.
I think like that kind of thinking makes you think about what's happening in the industry and how do you take advantage of not only or capitalize on what the customer needs, but shifts in the marketing industry as well. Like how are you, what has had the biggest impact in your marketing in terms of some of the trends you've seen in the last year or two?
I think, and I know that we have this in another question, but I think really data is at the heart of, I never would have thought 20 years ago that I actually needed to understand like infrastructure, platforms, data, and instrumentation to actually do great marketing. So I think for me is the sort of multi-channel approach to marketing, right? I think in the past we tend to see, hey, this channel delivered this and this, but as you think of multi-touch attribution, you have a lot of channels that work together, and a lot of companies don't have that visibility because either you're in marketing and you're kind of trying to drive your campaign, but you don't have integration with the product or other areas. So I think for me, I never thought that I'd be sort of caring about the tools and platforms that we use as marketers, and really advocating for to broaden what products we use and pilot things that traditionally marketing would be more of the inform, but not necessarily really influencing IT as a line of business manager, influencing decisions that IT makes as well. Which has actually then influenced a lot of like how we go to market, right? Because you live in this place where Microsoft, as a commercial company, we would really be targeting the ITDM, the IT decision maker, and sort of, some BDMs, but really our audiences have really expanded to really look at marketeers, right? And the offerings that we have, and other line of business leaders, whether they're in the industry or others, as we are going to market for people to adopt our products.
Well, and I know the market is competitive for what you're doing, and when you think about those audiences and all the messages in front of them, for cloud services and productivity software like Office specifically, like there are a lot of new entrants in the space as well, and acquiring customers can be expensive. So how have you continued to break through and grow Microsoft in the face of this?
Yeah, so I think we look at acquisition and retention motions. We look at our existing base and what are the products that our existing base has not adopted that we want them to adopt, especially as we migrate people to the cloud. And then from an acquisition standpoint, I think every sort of, as we look at lifetime value and acquisition costs, we really have some areas where we can actually spend more to acquire a customer because we have a higher customer lifetime value. When you're in the services businesses, it's a little easier to make the connection or faster to make that connection of, hey, I acquired this customer, they did a trial, and then 60 days later they converted into a paying customer. So for us, it's been doing a lot of work and really not only looking at acquisition, but looking both like first and third-party data sources and how can we actually use that, including our product services, to actually drive the business. So it's been a combination, and then really thinking of, if you put the customer in the center, thinking of that individual as really having the boundaries between life and home, life and work be a little bit sort of shades of gray, and then trying to reach them accordingly with relevant content or information where they are in the journey.
Well, and speaking of your products and where they are on the journey, I spoke a little bit about mobile before you came up.
Yeah.
How has mobile changed the way you're marketing Azure and Office?
Yeah, so I don't think we're further enough in the kind of mobile space. We're relying on a lot of our partners, whether it's Facebook, LinkedIn, and others, to actually help us, and Google to really power that mobile experience. So I think for us, it's been how do we create experiences in the different platforms that are mobile friendly? And that does not mean responsive design. That's like you're not even the lowest common denominator to delight customers. And really thinking through, hey, if people are willing to buy a car on their phone, they're definitely going to be willing to buy a little bit of like cloud storage or Office 365. And really thinking through what are some custom paths that we can actually do so that the customer can purchase that service and then be delighted within the first 5 minutes of using our product. So I think for us, we're doing a lot of pilots around sort of trial adoption. So traditionally in some of our publisher platforms, trial adoption, because doing a trial for a cloud service is a little bit more complicated than doing a trial, I don't know, for like a banking service or something like that. So figuring out how do we get people more comfortable with adopting some of our services that traditionally are not sort of mobile-friendly trials, and that requires work from our engineering partners to actually change how people are onboarded, and which is no easy feat. But I think we're all sort of aligned on ensuring that we're simplifying that customer experience, regardless whether it's buying a Surface or for commercial use or Windows or any of our other products.
I saw some of those messages in my newsfeed this morning from you guys on that, and I think that testing and learning and iterating as you approach mobile in the way that you're doing, like Microsoft's really good at that. So that tends to be the way that people win.
Yeah, I think it's always a challenge, like, innovate but drive scale, right? And how do those things go hand in hand? But I think we always try to ensure that we have, even with limited budgets and as we try to gain efficiencies, to always leave somewhat of a budget so that we can actually do some of these smaller test and learn examples that then we can roll out globally. Which is also, some platforms are great in the US, but they don't necessarily scale globally. And for Microsoft, if we're going live, we basically go live globally. So also looking to figure out what synergies do you have with publishers and platforms and that can actually scale globally, which is, for some platforms is easier than others.
Let's talk about content marketing.
Yes.
Because 86% of B2B marketers say in the most recent eMarketer B2B content marketing study, that content marketing is part of their strategy. Yet in that same doc, it says only 11% say that their content marketing strategy is very effective. So there's some room for improvement, I think, as an industry there. How are you thinking about content marketing today?
So I'll tell a funny story. So we had a meeting, I want to say like 6 months ago, and my team came in and they're like, we want to show you the top performing content of all of the content pieces that we've built. Like, we're going to show you. And they show me a list of the top 10 pieces of content. So I proceed to ask a very simple question, which was, out of those pieces of content, which had paid media and which didn't have paid media? And then they all looked at me like I was a deer in headlights. And I'm like, no, because the 10 had paid media. So obviously, if you are driving paid media to one of those pieces of content relative to the 1,000 pieces of content, the one that you've decided to drive paid media are obviously going to be perceived as top performing. Then I proceeded to ask, so have we looked at conversion rates of which is harder, certainly in the longer lead sales cycle that we have. So we like to think of, hey, what's that 30, 60, 90, and then sort of 6 months conversion rate for that content. And they all looked at me like, again, I was a deer in headlights. And The reality is, like, we actually have the instrumentation in our global demand center to be able to do that analysis. Now, it's not immediate, right? So your media assets, you're optimizing daily. So it's that balance of how do I optimize for 6 months from now, but how do I get leads that are qualified? So, they sort of left kind of horrified, and I said, no, I mean, this is in the spirit of learning, because we have a mix of first and third-party content. And sometimes we find that third-party content, which is usually somebody has to pay for, tends to be a higher acquisition content up front, but it doesn't necessarily help convert people in the, at the later stage. So we have the tech in our platform, and we actually look at, hey, at the content over a 6-month period. What is the content that's helping us get people in the door? But then what is the content that's helping us kind of monetize that customer? So that includes content that is within the product experience, right? So we have acquiring content, but we also have content that is like, hey, how do I get somebody in Azure to adopt our data services, for example? So it's a combination. I think we're learning. I also think like the pendulum has swung where everybody's creating content. Yeah. And now I'm trying to think like, what's the next thing? Because I don't want to be one piece of content in the sea of hundreds of thousands of people of content. So we're thinking about like, how do we evolve and how do we innovate as we get feedback from our customers on what's working and not working. And I don't know. I'm hoping that you guys will help me answer that question at some point. But sort of in the sea of content, how do we differentiate when there's a lot of forest reports and analyst reports, and we have content on the top 10 security things that you should be thinking about to prepare yourself for the next doom and gloom security breach. So I think we're still learning, and I don't know that I could tell you that we've figured it out, but we've had some great learnings that has then helped us adjust the ratios of first to third-party content, and then also using our community to build content for us, which has also been helpful.
I think one of the things that's going to help is as machine learning and artificial intelligence becomes more sophisticated and helps distributing content, getting content out there. Already seeing a little bit about that with that. Microsoft, of course, has lots of investments in artificial intelligence and is a leader there. How are you thinking about machine learning and AI as it relates to marketing and as a B2B marketer?
Yeah, so I think, we certainly use it to optimize our media buys. We also use it to help with our sort of click-to-chat programs and inside sales, so that as people are answering the phone, they have, the people that they're talking to are more qualified, and they actually have more information or insights about the customers that they're talking to. So whether it's a chat platform or our sales or optimization of the marketing mix. So I kind of feel like AI is everywhere and has to be everywhere for us to get smarter. And I like to say, let the machines help us get smarter, and then we can kind of focus more on a little bit more on the attribution work and measurement work that AI actually enables. So I think it's kind of sprinkled everywhere. And I think as you use DCO platforms for ads, they're building, and do you really need a creative platform, or you just have ads that are just optimizing and evolving over time? So it's kind of exciting, and I'm thinking like AI, and then what's next from AI, and how do we think of sort of talent and the people that we're hiring as technology shifts really fast.
And that's a good point. I want to go there next. One of the things that we see that's really successful is when customers, when our partners upload their customer lists and look at their best customers, and then allow our systems to find people like them. That tends to be a really powerful targeting tool that helps people drive sales, and that's all about machine learning to do that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you need first and third-party data, I think, in my humble opinion, to really get to that sweet spot where you're really optimizing, right? So we certainly, as we work with publishers, look at the opportunity of where can a publisher augment our existing first-party data accordingly. So that's critical. It's a little bit of table stakes as we're working with publishers.
You talked about your team.
Yes.
And growing a team in today's environment where things are changing so quickly can be really hard, because by the time you hire for a role, it's possible you need something different. How are you hiring a team that can evolve and that has the right superpowers of what you need today and also in the future?
Yeah, so I think, certainly for my team in the Global Demand Center, and my team, just for context, it's set up in functions. So there's web, there's social and community, and there's our paid media and our organic and web. So it's very functional. I think that there's a couple of things that have happened in the last couple of years. One is you really need people that are native digital marketeers. And I say that, it doesn't mean that they must have been born within, the digital era, because then I would be, thrown off the island, but that really sort of understand consumer behavior and have lived in the digital engines and understand kind of measurement and customer behavior. For me, that's number one. You need people that also have the desire to learn and can geek out with data, or at least consume it and understand it and actually be able to craft a story. I find that if you don't have people that have like an analyst and that have an inner analyst in them, then I think a lot of the work that we do and the measurement doesn't really pay off. I think you need people that love to experiment, as we use A/B testing platforms across. So you need people that are seasoned and can work with different platforms. So that's kind of another area that we look to. And then creativity and strong communicators. People make fun of me because I usually say, if somebody can't write coherently a communication, I certainly don't want them on my team, because I think that in order to be a great marketer, you need to be a really strong communicator. You need to sort of be able to craft a communications framework as you're kind of working through and really selling and pitching your product, your projects internally. And then people that are passionate. I know that may sound a little quirky, but I find that the people that are passionate about their work, I don't need to ask them to go the extra mile, because they're passionate and they believe in what they're doing. So I think those are some traits. And then in the marketing mix, and I never thought I'd be hiring really analysts for within marketing. I never thought that I'd be hiring sort of technologists and platform builders that can help us make sure that we have the right instrumentation and investments to measure our marketing investments.
When you talked about curiosity and intellectual horsepower, like that is so critical, I think, to finding people that can evolve in the future. 2 questions left. You mentioned measurement, so
Yes.
we can't get off the stage before asking you quickly, with longer sales cycles and with measurement today, like how are you looking at media attribution?
Yeah, so I mean, we're doing a lot of, we're doing a lot of work on multi-touch attribution sort of internally at Microsoft, because we have a lot of data that we can harness. And then we're partnering with different partners, whether it's Facebook or LinkedIn or others, to actually help us enhance the multi-touch attribution model. I always say, like, that perfect marketing ROI is the holy grail, and it's great to sort of be thoughtful and always believe that we're going to get there. But then I'm like, are we all out of jobs once we find that beautiful marketing ROI? So I actually think that the interesting learnings now with multi-touch attribution is that it becomes agnostic of channel, and you really let the customer tell you what is most effective. And to do it, you need some really strong internal capabilities to harness data, both first and third-party data. So for us right now, what's kind of interesting for me is that, I have my paid media team saying, oh, we totally nailed and we acquired all these customers, and I can come back to them and I'm like, actually, the web team was able to deliver that customer through these other on-network channels. So it's just interesting to see what's the right mix, and then how do you buy and measure and perform and look at performance of the campaigns when it's channel agnostic. It really puts the customer in the center. So for me, that's kind of the most exciting work. And then I don't know what will happen after multi-touch attribution. I'm sure there'll be something, and we use some of our AI models to help us actually do that. And What's kind of interesting is that for most of the customers that we've acquired, we see anywhere between 3 to 5 touch points in advance of actually acquiring them or monetizing them, which is kind of fun.
And it's a complicated subject, and we can talk about that for another 20 minutes, but our alarm's going off here.
Yes.
So what I'm going to end with is a lightning round. And I'm going to, this she has not seen. So I'm going to throw out 2 words, and you just have to choose one. It's not about, there's no right or wrong answers. You just go fast. Ready?
Okay.
Let's start with an easy one. Seahawks or Cardinals?
Seahawks, big time.
Early bird or night owl?
Total early bird.
Structured time or white space?
50-50.
Phone or tablet?
Phone.
Facebook or Instagram?
50-50.
All right. Windows or Office?
Both.
Jobs or Gates?
Gates, for sure.
Innovation or disruption?
Disruption.
Thank you, Ada, for joining us.
Thank you
Thanks
for
for having
having
us
me.
today.